It was always going to be Odette. Linnea Merrick had spent 11 months arranging every candle, every contract, and every folded napkin for her own engagement party, and she was still holding the seating chart when her fiancé lifted his glass before 300 guests and toasted her sister instead of her. For a moment she thought she had misheard. The Veran ballroom was loud with the particular noise of people who wanted to be seen being happy. Waiters she had hired moved between tables she had placed. The flowers on the piano were the ones she had argued down to a price the family could pretend to afford. She had built the entire evening with her own hands, the way she built everything, quietly, so that no one would think to thank her. Desmond Wexley stood at the head of the room with his glass raised and his smile arranged. "To the woman who understands what a man in my position needs," he said. His eyes did not find Linnea. They found Odette, seated at the family table in pale gold, lifting her chin as though she had rehearsed the moment in a mirror. To Odette, to honesty, better late than a lifetime too late. The room did the thing rooms do. It inhaled. Linnea felt every face turn toward her the way a field turns toward weather. Her mother's hand tightened around her wine glass and did not reach for her daughter. Her father studied the tablecloth. Somewhere near the bar a woman laughed, a small silver sound, and then covered it with her fingers. 11 months. Desmond had said, when he proposed, that she was steady. He had said it the way a person describes a reliable car. She had told herself steady was a kind of love. Now she understood what steady had meant to him. It meant useful until something brighter sat down at the table. "Say something," her sister mouthed across the room, and the cruelty of it was that Odette looked almost sorry. Linnea opened her mouth. Nothing came. This was the old trap closing on her, the one that had followed her since childhood. Give her a broken account to fix, or a panicked kitchen to steady, and her hands were the calmest in the building. Turn a crowd toward her and ask her to defend her own worth, and she forgot how to hold a glass. The seating chart trembled in her grip. She watched it shake and hated it and could not stop it. A fork slid from the nearest table. She had not touched it. It did not matter. 300 people had already decided the clumsy sister had dropped something, because that was the story they preferred, and stories are easier than looking. "I am," she began, and the word cracked. Then at a table near the tall windows, a man set down his glass. He did it without hurry. That was what made people notice. The rest of the room had been performing motion all night, and this one movement was still. Chairs stopped scraping. The silver laugh at the bar died. Linnea did not know his name yet, but she knew the shape of the silence around him, because it was the same silence that had settled over the room twice already that evening, once when he entered and once when he crossed near, a hush that arrived before he did. Corrado Renzi rose to his full height, and the ballroom she had built lowered its voice for him. She had heard the name the way everyone in the city had heard it, spoken sideways, never fully. The Renzi name was the reason the Veran's rent had been quietly forgiven for 2 seasons, and the reason her father never explained why. Men who owed him did not say his name at full volume. Now he was walking, unhurried, across the floor she had chosen the wax for, straight toward the head table, toward Desmond, and then past Desmond, as though the groom were a coat rack. He stopped in front of Linnea. Up close, he was not what the whispers had built. Not loud, not gilded. A dark, plain suit and a face that had learned to give away nothing. He looked at her the way she looked at a frightened animal or a ruined ledger, as though she were a problem worth solving carefully rather than quickly. "Miss Merrick," he said. His voice was low enough that only the near tables could pretend to hear it. "The gentleman with the glass has made his choice in front of your guests. That was his to make." A pause. "The next one is yours." "I don't understand," she whispered. "You can stand here and let this room decide what tonight means about you." He did not glance at the crowd. He never once performed for them. "Or you can take my arm and walk out and let them wonder instead. I am not choosing you, Miss Merrick. I am handing you back the choice they just tried to take." Odette had risen. Desmond had begun to speak, some bright recovery, and no one was listening, because 298 other people were watching a woman decide. Linnea set the trembling seating chart face down on the table. It was the last thing she would ever arrange for them. She put her hand on his arm. The room made its sound again, a different one this time, and she did not stay to name it. He turned with her, matching his stride to hers so that she never once felt pulled, and walked her the length of the ballroom she had made, out through the doors she had chosen, into the cold, clean dark where the harbor wind was waiting. At the car, he opened the door and then stepped back, leaving her the room to get in or not. "Why?" she said. Her breath showed white. "Whatever you paid my father, this was not part of it. Why would you do that in front of everyone?" Corrado Renzi looked at her for a long moment, and something moved behind his eyes that she would spend weeks trying to name. "Because a while ago," he said, "you did something for me that you have already forgotten. Tonight I am beginning to pay it back." Then he shut the door gently, before she could ask what. He did not take her to his home that night. He took her to a hotel he apparently owned, gave her a floor to herself and left. No conditions, no visit. In the morning, a woman named Nadia arrived with coffee, a change of clothes in Linnea's own size, and an expression that suggested she had seen many strange mornings and intended to be surprised by none of them. "He would like to speak with you," Nadia said. "He asked me to tell you that wanting to and having to be different things, and that you are under no obligation." "Does he always send his messages in the shape of permission?" "Only lately," Nadia said, and almost smiled. Corrado's study was a room of grey light and water. Windows the height of 2 men looked out over the harbor, where freighters sat like patient animals in the fog. He stood when she entered. He did not come around the desk. "I owe you an explanation and an offer," he said. "The explanation can wait until you are ready to trust it. The offer cannot." He gestured to a chair. She stayed standing, so he stayed standing too, which she noted. "You need to vanish from a story that is about to be told about you all over this city. I need a woman the world believes I have chosen, for reasons that are mine. I am proposing that we agree to be seen together. An engagement, a public one. Long enough to serve us both, then ended cleanly, on terms we write down. You want to hire me to be jilted in reverse. I want to offer you a year in which no one is permitted to decide what you are worth except you." He let that settle. "You would be paid. You would live under my protection. You would be free to leave with notice. And you would never once be asked to be anything other than what you already were last night, which was the only person in that room I respected." Linnea had spent her whole life being handed arrangements dressed as gifts. She knew the weight of them. This one was heavier than most, and it frightened her precisely because it did not feel like a cage yet. She had learned to read the fine print of other people's kindness the way she read a supplier's invoice, hunting for the line that would cost her something later. She could not find that line here. Its absence was its own kind of alarm. "I want it in writing," she said. "All of it, including the part where I walk out." "I assumed you would. And I will not take your money for pretending. I earn what I am paid, or I do not take it." That stopped him. She watched it stop him, a small hitch in a man who plainly disliked being surprised. "There is nothing for you to earn," he said carefully. "The pretending is the work. Then find me real work in this house, or the arrangement is off." Before he could answer, the study door opened without a knock, which told Linnea more than anything had yet, because everything else in this house waited to be invited. A child stood in the doorway. She was perhaps 8, in a nightgown, though it was the middle of the morning, with dark hair and a stillness that did not belong on someone so small. She held a battered tin music box against her chest with both arms. Behind her, Nadia appeared, breathless, and a younger woman in a nanny's plain clothes, and the change in Corrado was immediate and total. The careful nothing left his face. Something raw took its place. "Vita," he said, and crossed the room and stopped a careful step short of her, and lowered himself until their eyes were level. He did not reach for her. Linnea saw that. Even now, even afraid, he did not grab. The child was not looking at him. She was looking past him at nothing, her breathing climbing, her small chest working too fast, the way a trapped bird works itself against a window. The nanny started forward with her arms out, and the girl flinched so hard she struck the doorframe. "She has not spoken since the winter," Nadia said quietly to Linnea, because Linnea was the only stranger and someone had to explain. "When she is like this, we cannot touch her. We cannot reach her at all. The doctors say to wait it out. It can last hours." The music box. Linnea's eyes had gone to it the instant she saw the child, the way they went to the one thing that mattered in any room. It was old and dented, and the little crank was bent. As the child's panic climbed, she wound it, again and again, and it played the same 3 notes and stuck. 3 notes and a broken silence where the 4th should have been. 3 notes and nothing. Over and over. Linnea knew those 3 notes. She had heard them once before, on a summer night the year before, in the service corridor behind the veranda, where she had gone to escape her own family and had found a small girl sitting alone against the wall, lost, frightened, winding a broken music box that played 3 notes and stopped. Linnea had not known whose child she was. She had sat down on the dirty floor an arm's length away and had not touched her and had not called anyone. She had simply hummed the 4th note, the one the box could not reach, then the 5th and the 6th, finishing the little tune the machine had lost until the child stopped winding and listened. She had walked the girl to the front, handed her to a frantic young nanny, and gone home and never once thought of it as anything at all. "Oh," Linnea said softly. She sat down on the floor of the study of the most dangerous man in the city, in her borrowed clothes, an arm's length from his silent, shaking ward, and she did not reach for her. She looked instead at the water in the tall windows, and she hummed the 4th note. The child went still. Linnea did not look at her. She hummed the 5th, the 6th. She finished the broken tune the way she had finished it once before, low and unhurried, as if she had all the hours in the world and none of them were being counted. She did not say the girl's name. She did not say anything. She left a silence open, the way you leave a door open, and she waited to see if it would be walked through. The music box lowered. Small feet crossed the floor, and Vita sat down in the open space beside Linnea, not touching, only close, near enough that her shoulder almost brushed the stranger's arm, and finished the tune with her, humming, in a voice that had made no sound since winter. No one in the room breathed. Linnea kept her eyes on the harbor. "You don't reach for the frightened thing," she murmured to the child, to the fog, to herself. "You let it come to you." When she finally glanced up, it was not at the nanny, and not at Nadia. It was at Corrado Renzi, still lowered on one knee, where he had stopped himself from grabbing, watching a stranger do in 3 minutes what love and money had failed to do in a season. His face was not careful anymore. It was the face of a man who had just recognized someone. "It was you," he said. "The corridor. The lady who hums." His voice was not steady. "She has asked for you for 11 months. She could not tell us who you were. She only had the notes. I had men searching a city for a song. You could have run a notice in the paper," she said. 3 notes and a reward." "I did not want the woman who answers a notice for a reward," he said. "I wanted the one who sat on a dirty floor for a stranger's child and then went home and forgot she had done it. Those are not the same person. I have met a great many of the first kind." Linnea looked from the man to the child, now leaning the smallest fraction into her side. "That is the thing I forgot," she said slowly. "That is what I did for you." "That is the beginning of it," Corrado said. Vita reached up without looking and closed a fist around Linnea's sleeve and would not let go. Over the child's dark head, Corrado met Linnea's eyes, and for the first time all morning he seemed to have no prepared sentence waiting. "The offer stands," he said quietly. "But I think it just stopped being mine to make." They could not pry the child loose. That was how Linnea came to spend her first night in the Renzi house on a chair beside a small bed, because Vita had walked her up the stairs by the sleeve and lain down still holding it, and every attempt to trade the sleeve for the nanny's hand brought the fast breathing back. So Linnea stayed. She hummed the broken tune until the girl slept. And then she sat in the dark and listened to a house that was too quiet, and thought about how fast a locked door can turn into a room a person chose. Corrado found her there near midnight. He stopped in the doorway. He did not come in. "You can sleep," he said. "I will send someone to sit with her. She wakes if the sleeve moves. Then I will have a bed brought in for you. Whatever you need." He paused, and she understood that he was choosing his next words the way other men chose weapons. "May I stand in the room? I will go the moment you tell me to." It was such a strange thing to be asked. She had been engaged to a man who walked into rooms as if he had grown them from seed. Desmond had never once asked to enter anywhere. He simply arrived, and the space rearranged itself around his arrival, and around her. "You can stand in the room," she said. He came only as far as the foot of the bed and stopped there, hands loose at his sides, watching the child sleep with an expression he would probably have died before showing in his study. For a long while, neither of them spoke. "Her mother was my sister," he said at last, very low. "Renata. She was the only one of us who stayed soft. That was supposed to be the safe thing, being the soft one, being kept out of all of it." His jaw worked once. It was not safe. Vita saw what they did. She has not spoken since. Doctors, specialists, a woman flown in from another country, nothing. And then a serving family's daughter hums in a corridor, and my sister's child comes back into her own eyes for the length of a song. He looked at Linnea. "Now you understand why I have been looking for you." "You have been looking for the song," Linnea said. "Not for me. Anyone can hum it now that you have heard it." "I tried that," he admitted. "Nadia has a fine voice. Vita cried until she was sick." A silence. "It is not the song." Linnea did not answer. It was too large a thing to pick up all at once. In the morning, her family found her. It was her mother's voice on the borrowed phone Nadia handed her, warm in a way it had not been in years. "Darling, we had no idea. If we had known Mr. Renzi had intentions, we would never have let that Wexley nonsense go as far as it did. You must bring him to dinner. This is wonderful for the family, do you see? This is wonderful for all of us." Not one word about the ballroom, not one word about the toast, or a daughter shaking so hard she could not hold a piece of paper, only the swift, practiced arithmetic of people who had watched a brighter thing sit down at the table and were already rearranging the chairs. Then Odette, taking the phone. "Lynn, you are not actually going to marry him. You know what he is." A pause built to wound. "You could give me his brother's number at least. It is the least you owe me, after all the times I covered for you." Linnea looked out at the harbor and felt, for the first time in years, nothing at all pulling her backward. "Goodbye, Odette," she said, and hung up, and handed the phone back to Nadia, and found her hands were not shaking at all. She would not take his money, and she made a small war of it. When a box arrived holding a coat worth more than the Veran's rent for a month, she sent it back unopened. When Nadia tried to install her in a suite the size of her childhood home, she asked for the plain room next to Vita's instead, and got it. She kept, at the bottom of her one bag, a battered tea tin heavy with folded bills, every dollar she had quietly set aside from her own wages across 4 years without the family ever noticing the accounts ran short, because Linnea kept the accounts. On the lid, in her own handwriting, one word: someday. Corrado saw the tin on the second evening, when she was counting it at the window, and said nothing about it. But the next day, no more boxes came. Instead, he asked her, formally over dinner, whether she would agree to keep the household books, which were a disgrace, he said, and which were being quietly robbed by 2 suppliers he could name and one he could not. He offered a wage, A fair one. Real work. You invented that so I would take money, she said. Look at the ledgers before you insult me, he said. If they are honest, I will apologize. If they are not, you will save me more in a month than the coat would have cost. He almost smiled. I am learning your terms, Miss Merrick. You do not want to be given things. You want to be asked, and the asking has to be true. She looked at the ledgers that night. They were not honest. She caught the first false invoice before she finished her tea. Something was settling into a shape she did not yet have a name for. A house where the frightening man asked before he came through doors. A child who would sleep only with a fistful of her sleeve. Real work under her own hands, and a tin marked someday that no one had tried to take from her. She should have trusted it less than she did. Because on the third night, carrying a tray of cocoa up to Vita's room, she passed the study door left ajar and heard Marek, the quiet man who followed Corrado like a shadow, speaking low and fast. The Wexley boy has been talking, Marek was saying. The whole city knows you stood up for her now. Good. But it means the Alessi side knows it too. And the moment they are certain you have chosen a wife, they will move on the custody claim before the ink is dry. They will stand in a courtroom and argue that the girl belongs with blood, not with a bought bride. A pause. You need this engagement real enough to survive a judge, Corrado, real enough to hold up under oath, or you lose Vita. Linnea stood in the dark hallway with the cocoa going cold in her hands. The offer that had felt for 3 days like the first door anyone had ever held open for her had a second reason folded quietly inside it after all. She had not been chosen. She had been needed. Again. She looked down the hall toward the room where a little girl slept, her fist already curling around a sleeve not there yet, and she did not know, standing in that dark, whether the thing rising in her chest was betrayal or only the old, familiar click of a door she had mistaken for open. Linnea did not sleep. She sat in the chair by Vita's bed with the child's fist knotted in her sleeve and listened to the sentence again and again. Real enough to survive a judge, or you lose Vita. It explained everything, and it explained the wrong things. It explained why a man like Corrado Renzi would cross a ballroom for a woman he did not know. It did not explain why the explaining made her chest hurt. By morning, she had decided what to do with the hurt. She would put it where she put everything she could not afford to feel. Into work. The household books were kept in a small room off the kitchen that no one else seemed to want, which suited her. She had been in them 3 days, and already the shape of the theft was clear. She had told Corrado 2 suppliers were robbing him. She had been generous. It was 4. But it was the 5th thing that kept her at the desk past noon with her tea gone cold, because the 5th thing was not theft. It was worse. A provisioner named Halloran billed the house for wine and linen twice a month. The amounts were wrong in a way that theft is never wrong. Thieves round down. They shave a little and hope no one counts. Halloran's numbers were padded up precisely to sums that meant nothing as money and everything as a pattern. Linnea had spent 4 years reading her family's books for the lies hidden in the honest columns, and she knew a code when it sat in front of her pretending to be a bill. She pulled the older ledgers. She laid the padded dates in a row. Then she found the folded society pages the house kept for Corrado, the notices, the court filings reported in dry, small print, and she matched Halloran's strange invoices against the dates the Alessi lawyers had filed and refiled their claim on Vita. They lined up. Every one. Someone in the house was not stealing wine. Someone in the house was selling the child, a date at a time, through a linen bill. Linnea sat very still. Then she gathered the ledgers under her arm and went to find him, and her hands, she noticed, were not shaking at all. She found him in the study. Marek was with him and left when she entered, reading her face on the way out the way a man reads weather at sea. I know about the custody claim, she said. She set the ledgers on his desk. I heard Marek 3 nights ago in this room. You need a wife the courts believe in, or the Alessi family takes Vita. That is why you crossed the ballroom, not the song. The song was a happy accident you could use. She had expected him to deny it. Desmond would have denied it beautifully until she doubted her own ears. Corrado did not. "The claim is real," he said. "Renata named me guardian. Her husband's people say a man like me is unfit, and that a child belongs with blood that does not carry my name. A marriage the court respects weakens them. All of that is true." He held her eyes. "And I will not insult you by pretending the timing was not convenient. So I was right. You were right about the timing." Something tightened in his jaw. "You are wrong about the ballroom. I had been looking for the lady who hums for 11 months before Marek ever said the word custody to me. I did not know, when I set down my glass, that you would solve a courtroom for me. I only knew that a room full of people were deciding a woman was worthless, and that I had spent a year hoping to find her." He paused. "You may believe whichever half of that costs you less. I have no way to prove the inside of my own head." It was, she would think later, the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her, and the most useless. Because he was right, he could not prove it. She could not check it against a column, so she did what she trusted instead. She opened the books. "Then let me show you why the timing stopped mattering an hour ago," she said, and turned the padded invoices toward him, and laid the dates beside the dates, and watched the most dangerous man in the city go a shade of pale she had not known his face could reach. "Halloran," he said. "Halloran is the pipe," she said. "Someone in this house is the water. These are not thefts. They are messages. Every time the Alessi lawyers knew a thing they should not have known, this bill moved first. Whoever it is has been telling them when Vita sees her doctors, when she leaves the grounds, when she is at her worst." She kept her voice even, because the alternative was not even. "You have a person inside your walls handing your enemy your sister's daughter and doing it in a column of a book that no one in this house could be bothered to read, except the bought bride." For a long moment, Corrado said nothing. Then he sat slowly, as if the news had a weight and had set it on his shoulders. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Since roughly 11 o'clock this morning." "You could have carried this to the Alessi side yourself," he said quietly. "It is worth a great deal. It is worth your whole tin marked, someday and 100 more like it. Why did you bring it to me?" Linnea thought about the fist in her sleeve at 3 in the morning. "Because I do not sell children," she said. "Not even to escape the people who sold me." Corrado looked at her then in a way that made the room feel smaller, and she recognized the danger in it, because it was the same look he had worn kneeling on his own floor while a stranger reached his silent ward. It was recognition. It was a man finding in a place he had stopped expecting to find anything, someone he did not have to translate himself for. "I want it in writing," she said, before the look could become something she was not ready for. "All of it. Now. The engagement. The engagement, and more than the engagement." She sat across from him and pulled a sheet of his own paper toward her. "You will not decide things about me for my own good and tell me after. You will not move me or manage me or protect me by taking a choice out of my hands. And Vita." Her pen stopped over the page. "Whatever this is between us, on paper or off it, she is never the lever. Not for you, not for the court, not for me. If it falls apart above her head, and she never feels the floor move. Those are the terms. I will keep your books, and I will find your mole, and I will stand in any courtroom you need, and in exchange, you will write nothing about my life without my hand on the pen." She slid the paper back to him to sign. He did not sign it. He turned it around and slid it back. "You wrote it. You should be the one who trusts it," he said. "Add the line about the money you refused to take so I stop losing arguments about coats. Add whatever guards the tin. Then I will sign a page you wrote, and not one word I did." Linnea looked at the blank space he had left her, the whole lower half of the page, and understood that he had just handed her the one thing no one in her life had ever offered without a hook buried inside it. "There is something I want that is not on here," she said. "Name it. A job that is real. Not the pretend kind you invent so I will take your money. Work that would still be worth doing if there were no arrangement at all." The corner of his mouth moved. "That one is finished already," he said. You found in 3 days a knife that has been in my house for a year, and my best people walked past it. The real work chose you, Miss Merrick. It appears to be keeping the people I love alive. I would put it in the contract, but I do not think either of us wants it that plainly written." She signed first. Her name, then the date, in her steady, careful hand. He signed beneath it without reading it twice, which she suspected was, from him, a kind of confession all its own. The contract changed the house, though nothing in it mentioned houses. She kept the books in the mornings and sat with Vita in the afternoons, and somewhere in the second week, the evenings began to arrange themselves without anyone arranging them. Corrado, who had taken his meals standing at a window with a phone against his ear when Linnea first arrived, began to appear at the kitchen table at the hour she fed the child. He claimed it was to discuss the ledgers. He never once brought the ledgers. Vita would eat only what Linnea cut for her, and only if Linnea ate the same thing, which meant Corrado Renzi, who had dined with senators and buried men in the same week, now ate whatever a silent little girl would permit, off mismatched plates, at a scarred table in his own kitchen, and did not seem to mind. The child had appointed herself the keeper of Linnea's attention. When Corrado spoke for too long, Vita would climb into Linnea's lap and turn her small back to him, with a flat and final dismissal. "She is guarding you," Corrado observed one evening, over the dark head now installed between them like a customs officer. "From me, in my own kitchen. She has good instincts," Linnea said. "She has decided you are hers. I am beginning to understand the feeling." He said it lightly, the way a man says a thing he means and hopes you will let pass for a joke. Linnea let it pass. But she caught herself smiling at a ledger for no reason a ledger had ever earned, and she caught him seeing it, and neither of them said that either. This was the danger she had not written a clause against, not the danger of being taken, the danger of being, slowly and without a single grand gesture, at home. That night Marek came to the study late. Linnea was still at the desk, and Corrado did not send her out, which she noted, and which Marek noted, and about which none of them said anything. "I traced the Halloran account the way she showed me," Marek said. He did not look entirely well. "The instructions come from inside, from someone with the run of the house and a good reason to be trusted." He set a single folded page on the desk. "You are not going to like the name, Corrado." I did not. Corrado did not open it. He looked at it the way a man looks at a door he already knows leads somewhere he would rather not go. "Then it can wait," he said. "Some doors a man should be rested for." But his eyes, when they lifted to Linnea's across the room, were no longer the eyes of a man who believed he held his own house in his hand. The arrangement required them to be seen, and so they were seen. A charity board here, a restaurant there, a photograph in the society pages of the feared Mr. Renzi and the quiet Merrick sister, the one everyone had a story about now. Linnea learned to walk into those rooms on his arm and let them wander. Her hands in those rooms did not shake, because she was no longer performing worth for people waiting to grade it. She had a contract in a drawer that said her worth was not theirs to mark. At home, though, the seeing was a different thing. Vita had begun to leave the music box on the arm of Linnea's chair when she wandered off to play, the way a child leaves a hand to be held and trusts it will still be there when she reaches back. Corrado had begun to keep a second chair pulled out at the bookroom desk, unremarked, as though the room had always had two. Once, reaching past her for a ledger, his sleeve had brushed the inside of her wrist, and both of them had gone carefully, elaborately still, and then pretended with great and mutual dignity that nothing had brushed anything at all. Linnea was learning that the most dangerous man in the city courted the way he did all things without ever once appearing to move. What the arrangement did not require was Odette on the front step on a Tuesday, in a coat Linnea recognized as the very one she had sent back to Corrado unopened. "Mother would not stop crying, so I came in her place," Odette said, sweeping past Nadia as though the house were already partly hers. "Someone has to represent the family, Lynn. You clearly are not going to invite us." She was radiant, as she always was, and she moved through the grey water light of the Renzi house, cataloguing it, pricing it, and Linnea watched her sister do the arithmetic she had watched her do her whole life. Rooms worth. People worth. A brighter thing sitting down at the table. "You cannot charm this house, Odette," Linnea said. "It does not run on charm. Everything runs on charm. You never learned that. It is why you were always the one in the kitchen." Odette turned, and her smile softened into something almost tender, which was when Linnea knew to be afraid. "I am happy for you. I truly am. But you and I both know you do not make men set down their glasses. So either he is the strangest man in the city, or this is a very good performance. Either way, little sister, that is a fascinating thing to know." There it was, the threat wrapped in silk, the way the best ones always were. "Say whatever you like," Linnea said. "No one who matters will believe you. People do not have to believe a thing to enjoy repeating it. You of all people know that." Odette's gaze drifted past her. And who is this? Vita had come to the top of the stairs, drawn by the unfamiliar voice, the music box held against her chest. Odette put on the bright, bending smile adults use on children they intend to win, and started up 2 steps, arms opening. Vita looked at her for a long, flat moment. Then she came down the stairs, walked past Odette as though she were a coat rack, crossed the hall to Linnea, and turned her small back to the visitor with the finality of a closing door. Odette's smile did not survive it. Children were the one audience she had never learned to buy. "She does not warm to everyone," Linnea said, and did not trouble to hide the pleasure in it. Corrado appeared then, and the temperature of the house dropped by degrees no thermostat measured. He did not raise his voice. He never did. He simply stood in the hall in his dark plain suit and looked at Odette the way a man looks at a bill he has already decided not to pay, and said that Nadia would see her out and that the family were welcome to write. At the door, Odette gathered herself and fired the last shot, because she was a Merrick, and Merricks always fired the last one. "Desmond asks about you, you know," she said. "Constantly, now that you are worth asking about." She let it land. Funny how that works. When the door closed, Linnea found her hands were steady, but her jaw ached from the holding of it. Corrado was watching her. "He has been calling," she admitted. "Desmond, 6 times this week. I have not answered once. You do not owe me an accounting of your telephone." "I know," she said. "I am giving you one anyway. I am not sure why." Corrado was quiet a moment. Then he said, in the careful voice he kept for thresholds, "Neither am I, but I find I am glad of it." And he went back to his study before either of them had to survive whatever came after a sentence like that. Desmond did not wait to be invited. Desmond had never once in his life waited to be invited. He was standing beside her car outside the clinic where she had taken Vita for a session, hands in his pockets, wearing the expensive rueful look he had practiced in mirrors. "You will not return my calls," he said. "So I had to be resourceful." "You had to loiter in a parking structure," Linnea said. "Those are different words for it." He laughed as though she had been charming rather than exact. "I made a mistake, Lynn. I panicked. Odette was there, and it was easy. And easy is not the same as right. I see that now." He stepped closer. The old Linnea would have stepped back. This one held her ground, because she had learned from a silent child that you do not have to flee a thing simply because it moves toward you. You look different. You look like you finally believe you are worth something. I did that. I woke you up. You jilted me in front of 300 people to marry my sister for her connections, and now that I have better ones, you have discovered my worth. She almost admired the shape of it. Desmond, you have not woken anyone. You only smelled money and mistook it for regret. She got Vita into the car. She did not slam the door. Slamming it would have told him he still held a place in the story worth slamming a door over. Corrado was waiting when they returned, in the hall, at the edge of the light, and something in his stillness told her Marek had already reported. He came to the clinic, Corrado said. It was not a question. He did. He has decided he woke me up. She hung her coat. I corrected him. I know. A pause. Marek offered to correct him further. I told him no. His jaw worked. I want you to understand that this was difficult for me, not because I doubt you, because I did not like him being near you, and I am not a man accustomed to disliking a thing and doing nothing about it. Linnea went still. That is jealousy, she said. Yes. We have a contract, Corrado. You are not required to be jealous. It is not in the terms. No, he said. It is not in the terms. He looked at her, and for once he did not choose his words like weapons. He let them cost him. I will not tell you it is love. Love is a word the men in my family have used to own people, and I would sooner cut off my hand than hand you a word shaped like a cage. But I will tell you that it is honest, that it stopped being an arrangement for me somewhere I did not notice until it was already behind me. You are free to do nothing with that. It is not a bill. It does not come due. Then he said good night and climbed the stairs and left her standing in the hall with the strange, unfamiliar weight of having been wanted by a man who refused on principle to make her pay for it. That night, for the first time since the ballroom, the old voice came back. Not his, hers. The one that sounded like her mother and her sister and Desmond all braided together, patient and reasonable, explaining that a man like that did not stay, that the clumsy sister did not get the ending, that she had best take the tin marked someday and go before the story remembered what she was. She lay awake a long while, listening to it. She did not yet know whose voice she would answer it with. The old voice did not leave with the morning. It rarely did. It had lived in her longer than any person had, and it knew her schedule. It spoke to her while she worked the ledgers, reasonable as a bank clerk. A man like that does not stay. It spoke while she cut Vita's toast into the small squares the child would accept. You are the useful one, not the kept one. It waited until she was happiest, and then leaned in close, because that was when the fall was longest. Take the tin and go, before he remembers what everyone else already knows. By the third day of it, she had, without quite admitting it to herself, begun to pack. Not her clothes, just the small things. The tin marked someday, her notebook, the parts of her that would be quickest to grab when the moment came that always came. She was setting the ledger straight for whoever came after her, the way a careful guest strips the bed, when Corrado found her. He did not ask what she was doing. He looked at the tin in her hands and the too neat desk, and he understood, the way he understood the child all at once and without needing it said. You are getting ready to be thrown out, he said. I am getting ready. That is all. For a thing that has not happened, and that I have not done, and that I am not going to do. You cannot know that. Her voice was not steady, and she hated that it was not here over this. Everyone I have trusted has had a version of this morning. The kind one, the regretful one. It is always regretful at the end. That is the part they enjoy. Corrado was quiet. Then he did a thing she did not expect. He did not argue. He did not list her worth back to her like a lawyer, the way people did when they wanted credit for being kind. He crouched, the way he crouched for Vita, level, unhurried, taking up no more room than she allowed him. I am not going to talk you out of that voice, he said. It is older than me, and it will not lose an argument to a man it has never met. So I will only tell you what I see, and you may do with it nothing at all. He paused. You reach a frightened child, and you tell her, do not force it, let it come to you. You have done it for Vita 100 times. You have never once done it for yourself. You keep winding the same 3 notes and waiting for the silence because that is the song you were taught. But you know the 4th note, Linnea. You have known it all along. You hum it for everyone except you. Then he stood and left the room and left her the choice of it, the way he left her every choice, laid down and not pressed. Linnea sat a long time with the tin in her lap. Then, alone in the small bookroom off the kitchen, over the reasonable and patient cruelty of the only voice that had never left her, she did the thing she had done for a stranger's child on a dirty corridor floor. She hummed the fourth note, for herself, low and unhurried and steady, until the old voice ran out of the silence it lived in and had nowhere left to sit. She unpacked the tin, and she decided that when they were seen next, in whatever gilded room the arrangement required, she would not stand at the edge of it waiting to be found worthless. She would walk in as though the room were already hers. The room the arrangement required, as it turned out, was the worst possible one. It was a benefit for the Children's Hospital in the glass hall of the Old Harbor Hotel, and everyone whose opinion the custody case would rest upon was in it. Judges and society women who decided which stories were true by deciding which were fun, and the Alessi lawyers, pale and polite by the far windows. And because the universe had a sense of humor Linnea had stopped finding funny, the Merricks, at a table Odette had certainly arranged, Desmond beside her with the face of a man who had bet on the wrong horse. Corrado had brought Vita. He had not wanted to, but the Alessi side had whispered for months that the child was hidden away because she was damaged, and one evening of her cared for in public would say more to a courtroom than a year of affidavits. So Vita came, in a small dark coat, the music box left at home, because Nadia had promised her it would be waiting. It went wrong the way these things go wrong, quickly and from a direction no one guarded. A photographer's flash. Then another, a bank of them, turning toward the famous Mr. Renzi and the child no one had seen, and the light broke over Vita like a wave. She froze. Linnea, 3 steps away and caught in conversation with a woman whose name she would never remember, felt it before she saw it, the way you feel a draft from an opened door. She turned. Vita's small chest had begun to work too fast, her hands coming up, and the room began to still and watch. Linnea saw the moment Odette understood what was coming, and smiled, because the clumsy sister was about to be attached, in front of everyone, to a scene. For one breath, the old trap yawned open, every eye turning, the certainty that she would drop something and prove them all correct. And then Vita made the sound, the stuck, wordless sound of the music box that was not there. 3 notes with no fourth, reaching for a thing to finish her and finding the shelf bare. Linnea's hands went still. She did not hurry because hurry is a kind of grabbing. She crossed the small distance and sank down on the marble, an arm's length from the frightened child, and did not reach for her, and did not look at the 200 people learning her name. She looked at Vita, and she hummed the 4th note, the 5th, the 6th. She finished the tune the machine never could, low and unhurried, as if the glass hall and the flashbulbs were weather happening to someone else. And the child, who had not spoken since the winter, whom the Alessi papers called damaged, uncurled and crossed the marble on her own feet and sat down in the open space beside Linnea and leaned the smallest fraction into her side and hummed the rest of it with her, in front of the whole watching city. No one spoke. Somewhere a woman was crying and pretending not to. When Linnea finally rose, with Vita's hand folded into hers, she found Odette in the crowd, because there was one more thing that needed doing, and she was, at last, the person to do it. "You have spent our whole lives waiting for me to drop something," Linnea said. Her voice was not loud. The room had gone quiet enough that it did not need to be. "You are still waiting. I know, it must be exhausting." She let that sit. "I do drop things, Odette, when a room is watching me to see if I will. I always have. But there is a kind of quiet a frightened child makes, and a kind of trouble a broken book keeps, and a kind of person no one else will sit on the floor for, and in front of every one of those, my hands have never once shaken. You spent your life learning which rooms to shine in. I spent mine learning who to be when the lights go wrong." She smiled, and it was not unkind, which was the most devastating part of it. "You keep the rooms. I will keep what matters when they empty." She walked away before Odette could find a reply, and the crowd, which had been Odette's a moment before, parted for the sister in the kitchen as though it had always meant to. Corrado had watched from the edge of the light and had not moved to help her. She understood later that this was the gift. He had let the room be hers to win, because a man who had crossed a ballroom once to hand her a choice had learned that every choice after it had to be hers alone, or it was worth nothing. She found him in the corridor beyond the glass hall, where the music was only a rumor. "You did not step in," she said. "You did not need me to. You needed me to watch." He looked at her as though she were the only lit thing in the hall. "I have spent my life learning to be feared in a room like that. I never learned how to be what you were in it." All these weeks he had waited at thresholds and laid every choice down and never pressed. Linnea, who had learned from him that the asking had to be true, decided to do the one piece of asking he would never allow himself to do for his own sake. "You are always waiting to be asked," she said, and stepped close enough that he had to look down at her. "So I am asking. May I?" Understanding moved across his face, and beneath it something she had not seen him permit before. "Yes," he said. She kissed him. He went utterly still, the way Vita went still, a man braced for a thing to be taken from him, so she did not take. She waited, her hand light at his jaw, until he understood he was being given something and not robbed of it. And only then did he lift his hands and hold her as though closeness were something they were building and not something he had won. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Desmond will be disappointed," he murmured. "Desmond has been disappointed since the ballroom. He simply enjoys the view." She felt him almost laugh, which she had learned was rarer than his rare smile. "You are still jealous." "Violently. I have no intention of stopping." She did not see, over his shoulder, the pale Alessi lawyer step into the corridor, take one long look at the feared Mr. Renzi wrapped around a woman who was plainly no arrangement, and turn back inside to make a telephone call. The worst night came without a storm to blame it on. It was the anniversary, though no one said the word. Nadia had been quiet all day. Corrado had cancelled everything and did not explain, and Linnea did not ask, because some doors a person is invited through and some they wait beside. By evening, Vita had stopped eating. By 9, she had stopped humming. She sat with the music box in her lap and did not wind it, and the not winding was worse than any sound, because it meant she had gone somewhere the tune could not reach. "She is not here," Corrado said from the doorway. His voice had lost all its careful architecture. "She goes back, to the night. The doctors have a word for it. I have watched it a dozen times and never once been able to follow her in." "Then we do not follow," Linnea said. "We sit at the edge of where she went, and we make it somewhere she wants to come back to. Get down on the floor." He looked at her. No one on earth told Corrado Renzi to get down on the floor. She watched the old command rise in him, the instinct to manage the crisis, to do something large and immediate and useless. "On the floor," she said again gently. "You cannot rescue her out of it. You can only be worth returning to. Down." And the most dangerous man in the city lowered himself to the rug beside his sister's silent child, and let a woman who kept his ledgers tell him how to love his own blood. They did not touch Vita. They sat, one on each side, an arm's length off, and Linnea began the tune, low, and after a while Corrado, who could not carry it, laid his palm flat on the floor between them, somewhere the child could arrive if she chose to. The hours went strange and long, and in them, because the dark makes confessors of people the day never can, the truths came out. "She was in the room," Corrado said, so quietly it was almost only breath. "When it happened." Renata put her under the table, and Vita did as she was told, and she watched through her fingers while men who wanted to reach me reached my sister instead. Because Renata was the soft one, the one we all agreed to keep out of it, as though agreeing kept anyone out of anything. His hand did not move from the floor. I had built walls long before that and higher after. I told myself walls were love. Vita stopped speaking, and I heard it as proof I was right. Keep them in. Keep the world out. Reach for the frightened thing and hold it so tightly that nothing can ever take it. He looked at her across the child. You told me the opposite in the first hour I knew you. You do not reach for the frightened thing. You let it come to you. I have been trying to unlearn a lifetime in a season. Linnea kept the tune under her breath a moment longer. Then she gave him the thing she had never given anyone, because he had gone first, and because the room was dark, and because his hand was flat on the floor for a child, and she had suddenly understood that no one had ever laid a hand on any floor for her. My mother was ill for most of my childhood, she said. Long and frightening, and my father could not bear it, so it fell to me. I was very good at it. I was calm when she could not breathe. I counted her pills. I forged the calm right through my own chest until it set. The family learned that Linnea does not need looking after. Linnea is the one who does it, and Odette was the one you protected, and I was the one you used to protect her. She found that her voice had gone even, the dangerous kind of even. So I am steady when someone is frightened, because that is the only time anyone was ever glad I was in the room. And I drop things when I am watched, because being watched meant being measured, and being measured meant coming up short of Odette. I did not decide any of that. It was decided for me before I could spell my own name. For a while there was only the tune and the child's breathing, without either of them making it happen, beginning to match it. Who hums the fourth note for you? Corrado said. It was not a clever question, and he did not ask it cleverly. He asked it like a man who had just noticed a wound on someone he had been looking at for weeks. Linnea opened her mouth to make it light. Nothing light came. No one, she said. There has never been anyone at the edge of my dark. I learned to hum it myself. You saw me. She managed something almost like a smile. It is not the same, but it kept the silence from having a chair. Corrado looked at her across his sister's child for a long moment, and did not offer to be the one, which she noticed, and was grateful for, because an offer in that dark would have been a thing taken and not given. Instead he said, Then I will learn the note, not to own it, so that it exists in the world in more than one mouth, and you are not the only person who can reach you. And somewhere between one repetition and the next, Vita came back. She did not announce it. Her small hand simply left the music box and landed on Corrado's flat palm on the floor, and then reached with the other and took a fistful of Linnea's sleeve, so that the child lay bridged between them, holding the hand of the man who built walls and the sleeve of the woman who opened doors, and slept. Nothing else happened. He did not kiss her. She did not move into the curve of his arm, though it was there, and open, and she saw that it was. They sat on either side of a sleeping child until the window went gray, their hands not quite touching over the small, warm back. It was more than enough. It was the most that had ever happened to her. The call the pale lawyer made in the corridor took 9 days to arrive as consequence. It arrived at dusk, Marek walking into the study without his usual calm. The folded page finally opened, a name on it that told Linnea why Corrado had wanted to be rested before he read it. The mole was the nanny. The quiet young woman who had held Vita's hand toward every doctor, who knew each route and each hour the child was most exposed, had sold those hours to the Alessi through a linen bill for a year. She was gone by the time they knew and had made one last sale on her way out. They have the girl's schedule for the week, Marek said. All of it. And they know now, from the hotel, that the marriage is not paper, which means they cannot beat you in a courtroom, so they will not try one. He did not soften it. They will take her, or the woman who found their pipe, and they will trade. Tonight is not safe. This house is not safe. Linnea watched the change come over Corrado and knew it before it finished arriving, because she had spent her life reading the faces of people about to decide something on her behalf. The careful man went away. The wall builder came back. I am moving you tonight, he said. To her, not asking, already turning to Marek, already ordering. The place upstate. Both of you separated, different routes. Linnea to the north house. Vita stays with me where I can hold the perimeter. You leave in 20 minutes. Marek drives. The room went very quiet. No, Linnea said. He did not seem to hear it. He was already listing precautions, the phone in his hand, the machine of his fear running as it had for 11 years. smooth and total and certain it was love. Corrado! She said it once more, and this time it stopped him. You are separating me from Vita. You are sending me to a house I have never seen, decided in a sentence, informed after. You are moving me for my own good and taking the choice out of my hands. She watched him hear all of it. I wrote a page, you signed it. You will not decide things about me and tell me after, and Vita is never the lever. She never feels the floor move. You are about to make her feel the whole floor move tonight, at the 1 hour she is most likely to go back to the room she watched through her fingers, and you will send away the only person who can bring her out of it, because your fear has told you a wall is the same thing as an arm. They will use you against me, he said, and his voice cracked on it, and she almost forgave him for the sound alone. They will take you off a street, and I will get a call. I have had that call. I buried the last soft thing I loved because I told myself keeping her out of it was the same as keeping her safe. I will not do that arithmetic again. So you will do the other arithmetic. The one where you keep me safe by making me a package you route upstate. Her eyes were wet. Her voice was not. That is the arithmetic that killed her, Corrado. Not the softness, the certainty. The man deciding he knew best what the frightened thing needed, and reaching and holding so hard that the thing he protected had no say in its own life at all. She saw the blow land. She was not glad of it. You reached, she said softer, the one thing you taught your own hands never to do. The first night you were truly afraid, you grabbed. For a long moment he stood in the machinery of his own terror and could not choose between it and her. And because he could not choose in time, she chose. I am not going upstate, she said, and I am not staying, because if I stay tonight, it will only be because leaving would hurt her, and the moment I let that be the reason, she has become the leash. I swore she never would, even to me, especially to me. She took the tin marked "Someday" down from the shelf. You do not get to keep me by frightening me into a car. If you want me, you will have to learn the thing you have never once managed. You will have to let the frightened thing go and trust it to come back on its own and survive, not knowing whether it will. She stopped at the door. She did not look at the stairs because if she looked, she would climb them and lie down beside a small, warm back and never be able to leave, and then the leash would be real. Tell her I did not go because of her, Linnea said. Tell her the truth, that the grown people made a mess above her head, and that I am coming back the moment it is mine to choose, and that the note is hers now. She does not need my mouth to make it. Her voice broke, once cleanly. And do not you dare send me her grief. Do not photograph her tears. Do not let Marek mention she is not eating. If she comes back into my life, let it be because I chose her freely. You owe her a mother who was not delivered by guilt. You owe me the same. Then she walked out of the Renzi house into the cold, clean dark where the harbor wind was waiting, exactly as she had walked into it, and this time there was no arm to take. Behind her, for the first time in his life, the most dangerous man in the city let a thing he loved leave through a door he was strong enough to have blocked. It was the bravest thing he had ever failed to do. Linnea took a room above a laundromat at the unfashionable end of the harbor, where the dryers ran warm through the floor and the rent fit inside the tin marked "Someday" with room to spare. It was small, and it was hers, and the key belonged to no one else. And on the first night she sat on the bare floor and cried, not because she regretted leaving, but because she had finally done a thing no one had frightened or shamed or arranged her into. And grief and freedom, it turned out, arrived wearing the same coat. In the mornings, she went to the clinic where she had once taken Vita and asked the counselor there, a tired, kind woman named Sorel, whether they needed someone good with the children who had gone quiet. They did. Everyone always did. There were more shut doors in the world than there were people willing to sit beside them without knocking. So Linnea sat on floors. She hummed fourth notes. She let frightened, furious, silent children come to her on their own feet or not at all, and did not once mind the not at all because she had learned the waiting was the whole of the gift. Sorel watched her for a week and then said the thing that changed the shape of Linnea's someday. "You should be doing this with your name on the door. You have the hands for it. We can help you get the paper." The tin, which had read "someday" since before Linnea could remember what she was saving toward, began, quietly, to have a shape. A small, quiet room. A practice for the children no one else would sit still long enough to reach. She stopped thinking of the money as escape. She started thinking of it as a beginning. She was clumsy still, in the ways that had nothing to do with fear. She knocked a mug off Sorel's desk her first week and apologized before it struck the floor, and Sorel only said that a woman who never broke a cup had never once hurried toward someone. But she did not tremble the afternoon a boy who had not let an adult near him in a year crawled, an inch at a time, across the linoleum and fell asleep against her shoulder. Her hands then were the stillest things in the building. She was becoming the person she had always been in the only moments the world had ever been glad of her, except that now the moments belonged to her. And so did the walk home after, to a room with her own key in the door. She did not call him. He did not call her. That silence was the hardest thing she had ever kept, and she understood, keeping it, exactly what she had asked of him, and how much it would cost him to pay. He paid it. She learned afterward, in pieces, what those weeks had been in the Renzi house. That the Alessi threat had broken not with violence but with paperwork, because a nanny who sells a child leaves a trail, and Linnea had already found the whole of it folded into a linen bill, and Marek had handed the courthouse a betrayal so complete that the Alessi lawyers stopped returning their own clients' calls. That the danger had passed within the week, and Corrado could have telephoned her the moment it did, could have said, "It is safe now, come home," and had every right to. He did not. Because it is safe now, come home was still a summons, and he had promised, without being asked, to stop summoning the people he loved. What he did instead, on the nights the house was worst, was sit on the floor outside Vita's door and speak low to a child who did not yet answer. "I did the thing I always do," he told her once. "I saw the danger and took the choice out of the room. She told me what mattered, and I listened until fear made me deaf." He did not say it to be forgiven, but because someone in that house had finally learned to name a thing without reaching for it. And she learned the other thing, the thing that undid her. Vita had begun to speak. It happened, Nadia would tell her much later, on an ordinary grey afternoon, 3 weeks into the silence Linnea had left behind her. The child had carried the broken music box to the window and wound it, 3 notes and the stuck place, 3 notes and nothing, the way she had 1,000 times before, and then into the gap where the 4th note went. In a voice rusted from a winter and a spring of disuse, Vita had hummed it herself. The note the box could not reach. The note that only ever one person had given her. And then she had said aloud to the window, to the grey water, the first word she had spoken since the night under the table. Linnea. Corrado had been in the doorway. Nadia said he had put his hand against the frame to keep standing. He had held, in that moment, the single most powerful thing a man in his position could hold. A mute child, speaking, his enemy beaten, his house safe, and the woman he wanted more than his own certainty living at an address he knew, 1 telephone call away. He had only to lift the phone. "She is speaking, Linnea. She said your name. Come home. No lever on earth pulls harder." It would have worked, and they both knew it. He did not lift the phone. He wrote it down instead, the date and the word, in his sharp hand, and put it in a drawer, and sat with a speaking child and an aching want, and told no one, because Linnea had said, "If she comes back to me, let it be because I chose her freely, and because a man only gets to prove he has changed by doing the changed thing on the night it costs him everything." Linnea found all of this out afterward. On the day itself she knew none of it. She only looked up from a child's file and found Corrado Renzi standing just inside the door, in a plain dark coat with the harbor rain still on his shoulders, having driven himself, alone, with no guards and no gifts, and nothing in his hands at all. He did not cross the room. He stopped a careful step inside the door, the way he stopped for frightened things. and he waited to be told whether he could come farther. "You found me," she said. "You were not hiding. That is a different thing." His eyes moved over her, the clinic, the small bright disorder of a life she had built without him, and something in his face she could not name and did not think he could either. "I am not here to bring you back. I need you to hear that first, because everything I say after it will sound like the opposite, and it is not. The danger is finished. It has been finished for some time. I did not tell you because telling you would have been a hook, and I have hooked enough people into staying." "I know it is finished," she said. "It has been in the papers. You could have called." "Yes. Why did you not?" "Because you asked me to let the frightened thing come back on its own." His voice was very level, the way it went when the thing underneath it was not. "And because I would rather want you across a city for the rest of my life than have you across a table because I frightened or guilted or arranged you there. I have had the second kind of company. It is worse than being alone. I did not understand that until you took a tin off a shelf and walked into the dark, and I let you, and it was the worst night of my life, and I did not once regret letting you go, only that I had built a night worth letting go from." Linnea set the file down. Her hands, she noticed, were steady. "How is she?" she said, because she could not help it, and because it was hers to ask now, freely, from a room of her own. And Corrado, who could have ended it right there, who could have said she is speaking and watched it bring her to her knees, looked at Linnea for a long moment and made the last and hardest choice of all. "She is well," he said. "She is safe. She misses you." He stopped. "There is more, and it is good, and it is the best news I have ever carried. But I am not going to tell it here, in a doorway, because if I tell it now, it becomes the reason you come back, and I need it to be a thing you find after, not a thing that pulls you there. Come and see her because you want to see her. Then I will give you the good news, and it will be a gift, and not a leash." Linnea looked at the man who had once decided everything, and now would not even give her happy news for fear of steering her with it, and understood that he had, in the end, learned the fourth note. Not to own it, so that it would exist in the world in more than one mouth. "I am not coming back as anyone's arrangement," she said. "Not a bought bride, not a courtroom's proof, not a wall you build higher. If I come, it is as myself, with a room of my own that I keep, and a name going on a door across town, and a page we write again from the start, with all of my terms, and this time some of yours, because a thing only holds if both hands are on the pen." "I would hate any page that let you leave," he said. "Write it anyway. I will sign a thing you wrote and not one word I did. I have done that once. It is the only contract I have ever trusted." She crossed the room. She was the one who crossed it. And she stopped a careful step from him, the way he had stopped for her, and she let him see her decide, and then she took his rain-cold hand in her steady one. "Take me to see Vita," she said. "Then give me the good news." Something broke open in his face that 11 years of walls had held shut. "Ask me in," he said quietly, at the door of his own car, holding it and stepping back, leaving her the room to get in or not, exactly as he had on the worst and best night of both their lives. "I have become very good at waiting to be asked. It turns out I only ever wanted to be asked by you." She saw Vita first that day, before any good news was spoken. The child heard the car and came to the top of the stairs the way she always had, the music box against her chest, and for a moment the whole world held its breath the way the ballroom once had. Then she came down, and did not walk past anyone as though they were a coat rack, and stopped in front of Linnea and wound the little broken box. 3 notes, the stuck silence. And into it, looking up in a small, rusted voice that a fortune of specialists had never been able to buy, she sang the 4th note, and the 5th, and the 6th. And then she said, "You came back," and Linnea sank down on the floor and wept while a formerly silent child patted her hair and told her not to cry, because the note was theirs now, and a thing you both know cannot be lost. Over the child's dark head, Corrado stood with wet eyes and said nothing, because he had given her the good news the only honest way there was, by letting her walk in and find it. That was the spring. By the autumn there were other things. The tin marked Someday was empty because Someday had a street address now, a small bright room at the good end of the harbour with a hand-painted sign that read The Fourth Note, where difficult children and their worn-out families were met by a woman who never reached for the frightened thing but waited. The tin sat on her own windowsill, in her own room, which she kept with her own key, and held buttons now, and a photograph of a child at the top of a staircase. Odette came once, in the autumn, to a benefit Linnea attended as herself, and called her, within earshot of a useful crowd, the sister who married up. Linnea only smiled. And Vita, who had opinions now and shared them without charge, looked Odette up and down with a child's terrible clarity, and said, "She is the one who does not know the note," and turned her small back with the finality of a closing door. The crowd laughed, and not at Linnea, and Odette learned at last that there are rooms charm cannot buy, and that children are the door to all of them. Corrado offered, that autumn, to have the music box repaired. There was a man in the old quarter who could fix the crank and restore the fourth note, so the machine could finish its own tune at last. Linnea and Vita refused him together, which he called a conspiracy, and which it was. Perfect things have nothing left to ask for, Linnea told him. A broken box needs a person. That was always the point. It was never the note the box was missing. It was the mouth. They married in the winter, quietly, on terms she wrote and he signed without reading twice, a page that gave her a room of her own and gave him nothing except the standing right to keep asking. He still led men who lowered their voices at his name. But at the door of every room she entered, the most dangerous man in the city stopped and waited, and asked to be let in, and never once mistook a wall for an arm again. On the first cold evening of that winter, Linnea sat by the fire with Vita's head in her lap and the broken box turning out its 3 notes and its patient silence, and she hummed the fourth into the gap the way she had for a stranger's child a lifetime ago. Corrado came to the doorway in his shirt sleeves and stopped there, out of habit, out of love, and waited. "I love you," he said from the threshold, because he had promised himself he would say it only when it could never be a leash, and now it never could be, because she had a door of her own, and every reason in the world to go, and had stayed. "I have loved you since a room full of people decided you were worthless, and you were the only thing in it worth looking at. Ask me in, Linnea. I have become very good at waiting." Linnea looked up at the man who had once stood in a crowded ballroom and handed a discarded woman back her own choice, and understood that she had spent her whole life being told the story would go to her sister, to the bright one, and that here, by the fire, with a formerly silent child humming the note they had made, she had at last become the one who did the choosing. "Come in," she said. "Stay." And the most feared man in the city crossed the threshold he had taught himself to wait at, and stayed, because she had asked him, and because being asked by her was the only power he had ever wanted,